My next guest is Liz Shuler, the new president of the AFL-CIO. She is the first female who has ever run the AFL-CIO. It's amazing. It's going to be terrific. I had a chance to speak with Liz a short while ago about the role of unions in the current labor environment, and that's also very much about the future of our economy in our more perfect union. So, Liz Shuler.
Liz, it's so great you're with us today, and I really am so excited to talk to you because I have known a long line of white male presidents of the AFL-CIO, and I think it's just a historic inflection point. Just to be honest, talking about glass ceilings, this was a huge one. So just tell us how that feels, and how is your membership embracing or not the question of we now have this great female leader of the most important union in the United States of America.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you, Steve. You're a great partner, and we are so grateful to The Hill for the work that you do as journalists. And you're right, the labor movement, this is a different labor movement, and we're building for the future. And we are in a moment where workers are rising up. And I don't think many people realize that the labor movement is actually 6.5 million women. And it's the largest women's organization in the country. So I'm very proud to be, as a woman leader, stepping into a leadership role in this moment where women are really on the rise in the workforce, in the workplace. And I think it is a unique time for the labor movement, especially seeing what's happening out there in the economy.
Thank you for that. Look, we're sort of in this interesting moment right now in this country after nearly 2 years of the COVID pandemic, and we're not through it. We're beginning to see life come back in many ways, but there's still a challenge. But what we've seen as the economy comes back online is that labor has the leverage, that people have leverage in this time when there's a perceived shortage of workers. And I know you've commented specifically on that framing. I want to give you an opportunity to share with our audience your perspective. But it does seem, that I think that this is a unique moment where people are thinking about quality of life, what they're earning and paying, what they're giving up. And I'm just interested in, where do you think this is going to go so that we don't end up back in a system where labor is essentially neglected again and taken for granted?
You're right about the pandemic. Working people have been sacrificing, especially those frontline workers who showed up every day and kept this country moving through a crisis, whether it was bus drivers, continuing to get people to their jobs, our healthcare workers who, if you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, weren't even getting the proper safety equipment and personal protective equipment, PPE, wearing garbage bags to the hospitals. So they have actually been the ones who have sacrificed, who have persevered, and now finally are being seen. And the term essential is, I think, reflective of the fact that now people are seeing what it takes to make this country hum. But now the essential workers are being treated as expendable. And that's why we're seeing the activity we're seeing now with so many workers rising up and going on strike. We have nearly 100,000 workers who have either authorized a strike or are on strike right now, 30 different strikes happening. And that's because it's companies talking out of both sides of their mouth, right? It's, we need you, you're essential, but at the same time, oh, wait a second, you're coming back through, the pandemic, we're getting things back up to speed. And, actually, we don't necessarily need you like we thought we did, because we're going to pay you less. We're going to actually cut your healthcare benefits. And workers are not being seen and treated with respect, having gone through what we've gone through. And so I think that's really what is happening out there right now, is working people are waking up saying either I'm not being, recognized and appreciated, or, you know what, I don't want to go back to a crappy job and risk my health and get paid peanuts. I think that it's time for us to actually rise up and demand more.
Liz, one of the question I have is about President Biden. And you've said that President Biden is the most pro-union president in American history, which is a big, it's a big compliment to him and whatnot. But we also know that unions as a share of the US workforce have been declining over time. I'm interested in how you, under your leadership, are going to try and turn that trend around, and what the president, we had Ron Klain help open this whole forum on a more perfect union. The White House chief of staff made similar kind. But what structurally do you think is possible to do to turn that shrinking percentage of union representation around in America?
President Biden and Vice President Harris have been the most pro-union because they use the word union every single day, and no matter who the audience is. And I think that's a true testament to the values that they share with the labor movement, that working people be at the center of decision-making. And we've seen that in the policy work. We've seen it in the legislation that has been debated on Capitol Hill right now, that the investments we make as a country have to create good union jobs. And we hear that over and over again, that we as taxpayers who are footing the bill want a return on our investment, that this is going to actually lift everyone up. Inequality is at the highest we've seen it, where you have the 1% doing really well, and then the rest of us, the 99%, who are continuing to struggle. You talk to people on those picket lines out there right now. Most people are still not seeing the increases in their pay. They're being asked to make more sacrifices, despite the fact that companies continue to do very well and profitability is back. And CEOs certainly are, making almost 300 times the average worker. So there's something out of whack there, something out of balance, and this administration sees that. And so we've been working very collaboratively to make sure that the investments the country makes, the policy choices, the guardrails that we want to make sure are established so that working people see the benefits of what their government is capable of.
Liz, what are some of your red lines in the Build Back Better Act to kind of look and think about the infrastructure? It's tied to the infrastructure bill, but the human infrastructure that's tied to that, that's tied around the social contract for American citizens and how they engage with work. I've talked with the Chamber of Commerce a bit about their concerns that we still create a pro-growth environment that's that's growing in America, can lead to good jobs. But I'm just interested from the workers' perspective, what are you hoping to see remains part of the Build Back Better Act?
The labor movement has been advocating for both the infrastructure investments and Build Back Better for months. And it really is the change that we voted for in the 2020 election. So we care deeply about those investments, and whether you're talking about the clean energy economy that's going to unleash incredible opportunities for job growth, or the care economy, which also we know the system of care in this country is broken, and we've seen that through the pandemic. But we know that most people can't go back to work until the care infrastructure is built in a way that supports families and also makes the care jobs good jobs. And so that's what we're seeing in Build Back Better, is a prioritization of that investment. And so we would love to see the biggest, boldest plan possible. And we are advocating for that every day as negotiations continue, and including the PRO Act, which you may remember, labor law enforcement. I meant to say in when we talked previously that mostly unions have been, slowly shrinking because it is nearly impossible to form a union in this country without fear and discrimination and harassment, firing. So that until we fix our labor laws, which we have some provisions, in Build Back Better, that it really is next to impossible for workers to do that without great risk and great cost. And that is wrong, to have all this power in the hands of corporations, when in reality, the law of the land is to protect workers who want a voice on the job. So we need to enable more people to form unions. And in fact, you've probably seen the public numbers that have come out recently suggest that 68% of the public supports unions, 77% of young people, and 60 million people would join a union if they could tomorrow. So environment is absolutely right for us to be coming together collectively to demand more as workers and to balance those scales that I talked about earlier so that we can shrink that inequality gap in our economy.
You know, it's very interesting when you kind of think about unions and where they are and aren't. And again, I'm maybe woefully underinformed here, and so I'll look forward to you to educate me. But I kind of look at like my industry, media is one where there wasn't a lot of unions, but guess what? They're beginning to organize. I'm beginning to hear and see more union organizing movements within media companies. That's one area. Another area is the tech sector. And I'm just interested in your snapshot of what the realities are in the tech sector. Is there, when we see these revelations of within Facebook and, real worker angst and discontent, I'm just wondering, is that a precursor of something very different? And then the third, and I hate to kind of glob this in, but just sort of geographically the South. And I'm just interested in what you see happening, on those fronts, and what am I missing in my map?
Well, this is the moment, and we see unlimited potential for workers to be joining unions, especially in areas of the economy that are growing that haven't traditionally had a union footprint, and emerging sectors coming out of the pandemic that as we all come back to work and try to figure out how work is evolving and changing, and workers really want to have a seat at that table. They want to have a voice in how their workplaces function and the decisions that are made. And I think most people who work, no matter if you're a journalist or if you're out, on a wind turbine in the middle of the ocean, you want to have a say in making sure that there are workplace rules and guidelines and safety protections that will benefit you. And that's what unions do, is people coming together to leverage their collective strength to have a voice. And you mentioned digital journalists, journalists in newsrooms all across this country are organizing because they see what's happened to the industry. They see that, corporations are now looking at the bottom line instead of protecting their workers or making sure that, you're getting a fair return on your work. And I've even seen journalists use the collective bargaining process, the negotiating process at the table for things even outside of wages and working conditions, things like your carbon footprint. How can the company actually be held more responsible for its corporate practices? So I think that's this new generation coming in. It's a new way of looking at unions on how we can actually leverage into different spaces. And it's up to us in the labor movement to reflect the needs of the modern workforce. And we're hard at work, busy thinking about creative strategies to meet workers where they are. Think about how do we as the labor movement meet the future needs of workers as, the future of work is upon us. As you mentioned, technology changing our work. We want to make sure technology is working for working people, not just landing on us, disrupting our work and showing us the door. So we have the ability to do that as a society, as a country, to make those decisions that working people should be co-creating, co-designing, be at the forefront of the innovation process.
Well, let's just take it one notch further. And I know we're getting close to wrapping this up, but it's such a interesting framing. And I guess one of my friendly criticisms of the AFL and the labor movement in general is I felt it wasn't keeping up with the dynamics of the modern workforce, the complexity. And you just sort of felt like, yeah, it's great to weigh in on trade deals where you're trading steel and, chicken parts or something, but the complexities of labor are not all wrapped up in trade deals with other countries, that there are many other dimensions, particularly in a knowledge economy, particularly when a gig economy has become part of it. And I'm just wondering if the labor union world recognizes that it was slow on that, and what you're doing to try to ramp that up, of thinking about the modern realities of work and what we're doing. Because I'd love to just take a notch further what you just shared, because I think it's so important.
And you're right. We haven't been as nimble, perhaps, as we should be when it comes to talking about technology and not being just reactive, but looking around the corner at what we can be doing to flex our muscle in these spaces. And you spoke about trade. Yes, tariffs are important, but so is digital trade and the use of artificial intelligence and how we are seeing trade take place in these new arenas. We need to be fluent and proactive from everything, from quantum internet to advanced manufacturing and everything in between. And we need to make sure those technologies are human-centered. And so that's exactly why we established the AFL-CIO Technology Institute. This is sort of the place where innovation happens within the labor movement. We're just getting started to make sure that we're coming up with the game-changing ideas and proposals that workers should be thinking about, and what tables should we be at, and how can we make endless frontiers legislation. We see that through a worker perspective. Which hasn't really been done before, and that's been to some degree our fault, but also that workers haven't been seen in these future of work conversations. And we're talking about the future of work and workers, and we should absolutely be thinking about that through a worker lens.
Real quick, hashtag strike wave. What is it?
Striketober. Maybe it'll be Strike-ember soon. I don't know. We're hoping that we can, obviously it's the best thing to get workers back to work, but with a fair deal. And that's what, these strikes are all about, is being seen, appreciated, respected, and protected and paid. And so that's where we're seeing 10,000 John Deere workers on the line right now. We have, workers at Kaiser who are actually, contemplating a strike in healthcare of all industries, where workers should be taken care of who have sacrificed through this pandemic. But instead, they're looking at two-tier wage systems and changes to their healthcare. So I think we're going to be seeing more of this if companies don't wake up and actually, get the memo on treating your workers well, investing in them as an asset instead of looking at them purely as a cost. And that's what the future of this economy will be all about.
Well, to our audience, with hashtag strike wave, it's something I've been reading in Liz Shuler's tweets. Today, we're talking about what it takes to construct a more perfect union. And part of that is labor. Part of it is what we want in terms of a healthier, more successful, dynamic nation. And Liz Shuler, the brand new president of the AFL-CIO, so grateful you could spend some time with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve.